Hello everyone, welcome to the best place for the best takes. I'm Benjamin Cure. This is the Benjamin Cure Show. Week 3 of the NFL season was not my week. Last week on this show, when we were recapping all of it, I felt like I was doing damage control. It was all my picks went awry, all the situations that I thought would play out were the total opposite. It was a true disaster. And I still have a winning record on the season with my individual game picks, but it was tough. And I think for a lot of bettors that week, especially, the Colts beat out the Kansas City Chiefs. There were a couple upsets there that I didn't expect. Jimmy Garoppolo had an awful performance against the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos were awful, but still found a way to win. Everything was up in the air at that point. But now, week 4, we were just coming off of it, seemed like it was a lot more solidified. What I thought the season would end up looking like. And I'm going to talk a lot about week 4 because I think it was very telling of how things are going to go for the rest of this NFL season. And I want to start with someone who's not even on the field right now, Dak Prescott. Dak is set to come back next week in the Week 6 matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. He, of course, was nursing an injury, which forced Cooper Rush into the spotlight. A lot of people, including myself, thought the season was over once that happened. You expected 0-4, maybe 1-3, a really bad opening week for Dak. And the schedule didn't seem like it was going to get any easier, at least not for a backup. But Cooper Rush has shocked the world, going 3-0. He's 4-0 as a starter. Just an excellent way to keep the season alive. Of course, Jerry Jones has been touting that there might be a quarterback controversy. And while that's very fun, and while he loves to get clicks and give media clickbait, it's not going to happen. You're not going to bench the guy who's making $40 million for the guy who, started off pretty well against some pretty average teams. Because let's be honest, while we respect Cooper Rush and we think he's great and he has filled in the role of a backup quarterback almost perfectly, that's not sustainable. You played a Cincinnati Bengals team in week 2 that was still finding their footing, a Joe Burrow that was coming off one of his worst games ever, if not his worst game ever, 4 interceptions. I mean, Joe Burrow and 4 interceptions just doesn't even sound right. You've gone on to face the Commanders and you faced another weakened team. So 3-0 looks good on paper. It keeps the record alive in the NFC East. But it's not going to be something where, Cooper Rush is leading this team down the stretch come week 15, week 16. Dak is going to return. But what we've noticed and what is interesting is that the separation between Dak and Cooper Rush talent-wise isn't as wide as we thought. And that's scary. Why can Dak Prescott not seem to succeed in those kind of contested games? Dak would have won these games that Cooper Rush won. Maybe not the Cincinnati one, but everything else, for the most part, they'd still be 2-2 right now, or 3-1. I trust that Dak would have kept them alive. But Dak seems to struggle against teams who are above 500, and we've seen this throughout his career. And one of the problems that I thought they were going to have was the O-line. I thought the O-line was going to be horrendous. I talked about it in the preseason. There was no way they could fix that. And one of the shockers of the offseason, that Cowboys offensive line actually looks kind of good. It doesn't look as good as it has in the years past. It's not what it was his rookie season or his sophomore season in the NFL, but it looks good. And when Dak comes back, I think he's going to feel a lot more comfortable in an O-line that is more solidified than it was week 1, and certainly more than we thought it was during the preseason. Zeke is a little bit harder of a runner than we thought he was going to be. He's not perfect. He is not back. Tony Pollard hasn't been as involved. CeeDee Lamb has looked like a wide receiver 1, which is good because I had some questions about it. Was he a true wide receiver 1 going into the season? So I was wrong. I said, prior to the season starting, that if the Cowboys were going to succeed this season, depending on whatever their definition of success was, it was going to be because Dak carried the team. He put them on his back and he became a superstar. And in retrospect, I gave Dak way too much credit and we gave the rest of the Cowboys team way too little credit. Good offensive line, good running game, good receiving core. Michael Gallup will be back, which was a big question. He was out and injured. Dalton Schultz. So now the question becomes, can Dak succeed? And if he doesn't, whose fault is it? And I think if they do not succeed, you can point at Dak and say, I don't know, is he really our guy? $40 million a year, is he our guy? After watching what Cooper Rush has done with this team, you have to let that little inkling of doubt come in. What if Dak comes back week 6 and loses to the leader of the NFC East right now, the Philadelphia Eagles? What if he looks really bad and poor against Jalen Hurts? The questions, the headlines, they're not going to go away. It's going to be a bad look for Dak. Because what we've come to realize is the Cowboys can have success without Dak being a superstar this season. Dak just needs to be Dak, and they can finish easily second place in their division. Because the Eagles will end up winning it. If there's anything we have learned in the first 4 weeks of the season, Jalen Hurts is an MVP candidate, and that team looks amazing. The NFC East, which was 3 or 4 years ago one of the most memed, criticized, and awful divisions in football, historically so, is now pretty good. The Giants looking good. Dable coaching great. Saquon Barkley healthy, a great running game. Saquon is actually the leader in rushing yards as of right now with around 230, just over, I believe 236. This is a much more competitive division than it was previously. And by the way, I didn't bother to mention them because I think they finished 3rd or 4th in the division. But the Washington Commanders look competent. And that is a compliment. That is saying something. Carson Wentz, I was not a big Carson Wentz fan, actually looks really good. The running game looks good. Terry McLaurin looks good. Curtis Samuel was playing like a wide receiver number 1 for the first couple weeks of the season. He was a fantasy superstar for a lot of people on the waiver wire. So it is a much stronger division, and I still think Dak can make it out of there if he is average. If he plays non-turnover football and he plays Dak football, which is acting as a little bit more than a game manager, they'll be just fine. But the true test will come in week 6 when they face the Eagles. And I don't know who makes it out on top there. I would assume the Eagles. But if Dak loses that game, that first return game, with Cooper Rush having gone 3-0 or 4-0 or 3-1 at that point if he loses this week, it's going to bring about questions about Dak's ability. Because like I said a couple weeks ago on this show, for some reason, there is this aura surrounding Dak where he was very heavily criticized his first 2 seasons in the NFL when he was actually good. And once he got injured, all of that criticism stopped. Everybody kind of felt bad for him, which I understand, but then nobody ever went back to criticizing him or looking at him in a critical way. And I think that's a mistake. I think falling in love with the idea of a player or taking it easy on them isn't helping anybody. And I think Dak needs to prove that this is his team when he comes back. Because how embarrassing would it be if the locker room, the media, and the fans questioned, is Dak even the best quarterback on this team? He's no longer the best quarterback in the division, that's for sure. Jalen Hurts is that guy. But if you can't justify that you're the number 1 quarterback in your own locker room, that's going to lead to chemistry problems and just an angry, frustrated floor general when it comes to Dak. And that doesn't help anybody involved with the Dallas Cowboys. So if you're on social media often, you might remember the red flag trend a couple months back. It was on TikTok, it was big on Twitter, and for those of you who don't know, it was pretty much where people would talk about friends of theirs or peers of theirs or relationships of theirs where the other person involved had a red flag, something that stuck out to them, but they would ignore it because of another characteristic. And it was a funny trend. It was something that was true yet comical, and everybody kind of jumped on it. And I think sometimes we tend to ignore some pretty big red flags in sports. One of those being Aaron Rodgers. Right now, he looks great. Oh, the Packers are 3-1. They're looking so good. The running game looks great. Romeo Doubs is starting to look great. And everybody is ignoring the context and just looking at the box score and the record and the standings. Right now, they're tied with the Minnesota Vikings for the number 1 spot in the NFC North. And I don't think that's at all a good portrayal of the position the Packers are in right now. Aaron Rodgers is an amazing regular season player. That's why he won back-to-back MVPs. That's why he's a 3-time NFL MVP. He is an amazing quarterback to watch when things are going great. When you're down and out, I would never want Aaron Rodgers to be my quarterback. Never. Because in the midst of any sort of controversy or problems or conflict, he totally shuts down. He has started weeks 2 through 4. He starts the game hot. He's smiling. He's chuckling with the refs. He does well. Gets a touchdown drive. Gets things moving. Everything looks like it's working seamlessly for the Packers. And then just a single mistake throws everything off. And it's always a turnover. It's a fumble. It's an interception. Or it's a pick six. And right after that, Aaron shuts down. Because Aaron is a great quarterback. Is a first ballot Hall of Famer. But there's something that we wouldn't expect to be a problem that is a big time problem. Aaron is one of those people who demands perfection from himself and everyone around him. It has led to his success in the regular season and his overall success as a quarterback for the last however many years, 10 plus years. But that's not the way you play football when you need to take risks, when you're down and out, when you are down on the scoreboard. Whenever Aaron sees a teammate fumble or whenever he throws a pick, he immediately, in an effort to reduce the interceptions, to reduce the turnovers, shuts down. He's no longer willing to make the pass to the rookie. He is a lot more controlling with the ball. He is not willing to do anything more than simply take the easy completion or just move the ball methodically. His goal is to simply minimize the amount of turnovers, which theoretically, on paper, actually looks good. That is a good way of winning. But when you're down by a touchdown, when you're down by a score, when you're down by maybe even 2 possessions, you can't come back playing football like that. I thought we saw some growth from him when he threw that bomb to Romeo Doubs over the weekend, that Hail Mary, and then Romeo ended up fumbling it, and it looked like an incompletion. He couldn't keep hold of the ball. But that's the kind of football that you want Aaron to play when he is down. That right there. But that is not Aaron. He's not going to take those risks. He doesn't want to turn the ball over. He is very anti-INT, anti-interception. I mean, just look at him. For the past 2 seasons, he's thrown a ridiculous amount of touchdowns and an even crazier lower number of interceptions. Historically low. He doesn't like mistakes. It angers him. It frustrates him. And the second that one is made on the field, he refuses to throw the ball anymore. Because God forbid he have another interception or another fumble. And it's that controllingness of not wanting to make mistakes that leads to them ultimately losing the game. Because not everything goes perfectly in the playoffs. Not everything goes perfect towards the end of the season when you need to get hot and win a game. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers should not be proud of being 3-1. Not after last week's result. No Mac Jones. Brian Hoyer gets injured. You're playing a third-string NFL quarterback with Bill Belichick, who has a losing record without Tom Brady, who is below 500. And that game went into overtime. You almost let the Patriots beat you with the amount of talent that you do have, with a solid offensive line, with what we thought was going to be a top 10 defense, with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, and Romeo Doubs, and Lazard. The fact of the matter is, if the Packers want to win their division, because the Vikings look worse than we thought they would, if they want to win their division, if they want to win the postseason, and if they want a chance at playing for the Lombardi this season, they really do, Aaron is going to have to take more risks. He's going to have to step out of that box, step out of his comfort zone, and throw those shots that he doesn't want to towards the end of games, not when he's down. Those risky 50-50 balls, because you're not going to win any other way. Now, we're hearing that after the Pat McAfee show that Aaron has a good relationship with Odell Beckham Jr. That could be something. And I think they should definitely go out and get Odell, because that would be their one shining star this entire season. But for a Packers team that doesn't take risks in the front office either, that doesn't have a singular owner that Aaron can go up to and say, hey, I need you to do me a favor and get that guy, I just don't see it happening. Right now, the only person that they can rely on for their success in Green Bay is Aaron. He needs to take more risks. He needs to step out of his comfort zone. He needs to throw those 50-50 balls. And he needs to stop being so frustrated with his teammates. He needs to stop throwing the ball to Romeo Doubs, or just really anybody on the team, Christian Watson, letting them, following a drop, just not throwing it to them again. That's a disaster. If he throws a pass and one of those guys drops it, he won't throw them another single target until the fourth quarter. Matt LaFleur starts calling reverses and running plays involving them because Aaron refuses to give them a ball again. He holds an in-game grudge. And that might be an ego problem, a personal problem, a frustration thing where Aaron holds it against you. But you can't play football like that. Or let me rephrase that. You can't play winning football like that. Yeah, Aaron may know how to win in the regular season. The regular season is long, and there's a lot of changes and ups and downs involved. But when it comes to the postseason, when it comes to winning football, winning multiple games, multiple big games, when you're not at home, since they probably won't be playing at Lambeau this season in the playoffs, Aaron needs to be able to open up his game and go beyond what he currently is, which is an excellent but very comfortable quarterback at the helm. If you are a loyal viewer of this show, it probably will not surprise you that I was on my couch 2 hours before the Monday Night Football game started. I was very excited to see what the result would be and what the game would look like. Because after an awful week 3, week 4 was all about Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy has found his rhythm. Exactly what I had told you during last week's show. Everyone was so critical of him during week 3. He came into week 2, scored a touchdown, and won them the game. That was shocking. And unfortunately, I think that that game set up fans with the wrong perception of what Jimmy was going to look like for the rest of the season. Jimmy Garoppolo was not allowed to practice on the same field as his teammates during the offseason. They treated him like he was going to be traded or cut from the team. San Francisco did not do him any favors. Was not allowed to practice with his teammates, was not allowed to throw routes with his teammates, was not allowed to practice on the same field, was not given a playbook, and was told to take a pay cut in order to stay. Would not be paid his original contract. Jimmy practiced on his own, rehabbed on his own, ended up getting the playbook just last week probably, if not the week before that. He has made sacrifices for a 49ers team that has not done him any favors. And that is a quarterback. Is Jimmy Garoppolo one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL talent-wise? No. Is he a guy that you'd love to have in your locker room? Yes. Yes. A quarterback who is willing to make sacrifices for the sake of the team, who is willing to roll with the punches even after he's been treated horribly? Imagine if Aaron Rodgers had been put through all the situations that a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo had been. Or Kyler Murray. They are nowhere near as talented as each other. I'm not comparing Jimmy to Aaron's talent or Jimmy to Kyler's talent. But guys like that you know have an ego, that you know have a chip on their shoulder, how would they have reacted if they had been pretty much left out to hang and dry like that? So I knew, coming off a rough week, with more time, on what was not a short week, Jimmy would look better. And I think he looked better than anybody could have predicted. Jimmy is what we want him to be in big moments like that. A primetime game versus the Rams. 49ers are undefeated in the regular season. They're 6-0, 7-0 against the Rams now. And Jimmy did what he does best. A game manager. A floor general. Putting the ball in the right spots. Did not turn the ball over. Was not playing scared football either, like I think Aaron does at times. And was giving the ball to the right guys. He knows that he doesn't have to be a superstar, that he doesn't have to throw the 40-yard dime, or that he doesn't have to roll out to the right and make some big run like a Russell Wilson, a Kyler, a Mahomes, or a Josh Allen. He knows that he's got big, excellent receivers like George Kittle, like Brandon Ayuk, like Deebo Samuel, that will make those catches and get the yaks for him, the yards after catch. That's what San Francisco is big on. That's what Kyle Shanahan game plans for. And sure enough, when Jimmy plays Jimmy football, it works out. Deebo Samuel, massive run because he's a hell of an athlete. Those are the kinds of things that win you football games in the postseason. Knowing your role. Willing to step out of the box and willing to be a little uncomfortable when you need a third down conversion, when you need points on the board, when you need to make sure that this drive is successful. That's what Jimmy does. And that's why he has been so successful under Kyle Shanahan. Because as much of a love-hate relationship that they have with one another, Kyle Shanahan is slowly coming to realize this was always Jimmy's team. This locker room loves Jimmy Garoppolo. Nice guy, good-looking guy, gets the roster riled up. You can't ask for anything more from your quarterback. So Jimmy Garoppolo has proven to be much better. Vegas odds are back up for the 49ers to win the Super Bowl and the NFC East. Or not the NFC East, the NFC. They are looking a lot better. But the Rams look awful. That O-line doesn't look good. They have the highest sack differential. Matthew Stafford is making it way too obvious that he loves Cooper Kupp, and he only throws him the ball, and they look like a much worse team. Nonetheless, a very talented team, but they look like a bunch of individuals. Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp. Aaron Donald trying to make the big play every single time. Jalen Ramsey playing very risky DB football. They do not look like a good team. But Jimmy Garoppolo, against a team that he was not favored against, after an awful week, still came into his home stadium and blew everyone's socks off. Because Jimmy Garoppolo, right now, is the leader for the 49ers. He is the best quarterback on the 49ers roster, and he proved that once again. And the only thing that matters more than talent in this league is winning. So as much as everybody loves to say, oh, Trey Lance's potential, oh, this may be Trey Lance's team when he comes back. It very well may be, because that's the way that football is. Trey Lance is healthy. He looks better during training camp. He'll probably be the starter next season. But right now, trying to win a Super Bowl this year, 2021 to 2022, or 2022 to 2023, this is a better team because of Jimmy Garoppolo, because of what he brings to the table, because he is the better quarterback in San Francisco. Now, I'm aware that on this show for the past couple weeks, I have been very football focused. I haven't talked about MMA, haven't talked about boxing, haven't talked about any of that. But I'm going to transition here from football to futbol. Because let's be honest, I am from Miami. This audience is primarily from Miami. The viewers of this show, you know where I'm coming from. I'm a digital host for Inter Miami CF. It is what I do. I love it. It's a very fun job. It is a very fun team. And they have officially solidified their spot as of last night in the MLS playoffs. And I didn't want to mention it before when they were on that postseason run because I didn't want to jinx it, but they look really good right now. I've always said it to everybody who's asked me on the street, any fan, any boss of mine. I believe that Inter Miami is the most talented team in the MLS. Whether it's coaching, whether it's on the pitch, they just look so good when they are in rhythm. And I think you're starting to see that. They had a rocky first couple games to start the season. They went on a good stretch. They realized how good Campana could be. Middle of the season was a little bit back and forth, had their highs, had their lows. But just as it is across all sports, it matters how you finish your season, how you finish out those last couple games, what kind of a rhythm you get into. And Inter Miami has had a very solid ending to their season. And last night's win, 4-1 over their rival Orlando, couldn't have felt any better. That is the kind of energy that you want going into the playoffs. That is playing winning football. And with a talented team, a team that is in rhythm, that is being coached well, with healthy players, the sky is the limit for Inter Miami CF this postseason. So I'm very excited about that. Wanted to mention it on the show because I know we don't get to talk about it a lot, but they are still in the back of my mind, and I'm rooting for them. Another special announcement from futbol to football. I'm very excited to let you guys know that this Saturday, hopefully weather goes well, I'll be making my college football play-by-play debut for FIU football. I'm very excited. I've been looking forward to it. It is our homecoming game versus UConn, an excellent quarterback from St. Thomas Aquinas. I assume it's going to be a high-scoring game. I assume that to stay with it, FIU is going to have to bring the offensive momentum and energy to the game. I think the way that FIU wins this is through their own Deebo Samuel. If you're not familiar with FIU football, one of the, if not the most talented player on the offensive side of the ball is Tyrese Chambers. Excellent player. When he gets going as a wide receiver, the entire offense looks better. And I think that is FIU's key to winning this game. It's going to be very exciting. Make sure to follow me on Twitter. I'll be posting a link where you guys can listen into the broadcast. It is audio only, but there's plenty of resources where you can see the video. There's going to be plenty of streaming services and broadcasts of the game. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope you end up tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And that is all for week 4 of the NFL season, and now week 5 as we end this episode. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to like, follow the show on social media. Until next time, I'm Benjamin Cure. You're watching The Benjamin Cure Show. See you next week, everyone.